It was still very difficult. I understand now why I was meant to have that experience. And also, it's a wonderful way of being able to relate to those who are in that phase of the journey,
Yeah.
because there is nothing better than being connected to someone who creates illumination in a way, who can also say, yeah, I've been there. Let me put my arms around you, give you a great big hug, and surround you with all of this love.
A couple weeks later, I'm traveling and I'm on this huge ship and in the room it's uh golden warm colored with a huge window in the front,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a being standing there with a bald head
Mm-hmm.
off in the distance, and I'm just watching this person. I can't tell if male or female, and she or he turns around and I say, "Oh, it's you." And I felt with both of them, I feel a lot of emotion. Okay, especially with that one. And
Mm-hmm.
that and this one woman I follow, her name is Lena Denon, and she's a contactee that goes on the ships
Yes.
consciously. Okay, you know about her, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about Enki Ea, of the Anunnaki, who is back, who was the apparently the good brother, right, between the
Mm-hmm.
two brothers. And he had returned in February or around the beginning of 2022. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when you had your experience. That's when I had my experience. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. She confirms a lot of stuff that she brings through
Mm-hmm.
with my experiences. Luckily, my higher self and my guidance brings, helps me with these experiences before, not after, because then I would doubt it. But
Well, where a lot of the confusion comes in is linear time. And because
yeah,
it's not real, then that's where all of that happens, because we are all these things all at once. And the only thing that fragments that for us here is linear time, because we think of it as real and it's not.
right.
And speaking of which, we're doing a lot to actually elevate out of that. And one of the visits with Metatron, he said something that was very interesting. And he mentioned that to a certain degree, in a much the same way that we occupy all of our different incarnations at once, like literally at once, they're not past and future. He started off giving context by saying, you know, linear time is only real in your world. So you don't go from living your life in 600 BC to living the one in 200 AD to living the one in 500 AD to living the one in the year 2020 something. He said, you don't live them in that order. You live them all simultaneously. And you think that you live them in chronological order because that's the way it is here. And that blew it all apart. And he said, the interesting thing is that the false matrix stands on the foundation of the false time construct. And he said that as you remember who you really are, the false time construct goes away. And the foundation that all other false constructs stand upon actually collapses because it doesn't have a foundation. And then he gave me some hints reminding me that, for example, religions have made the calendar to keep humanity in the false construct of time, that the
Hmm.
banks ask you to pay your bills every 30 days and have clocks on their buildings and calendars inside the branches and things like that. And so there is this way, without getting too deep into that one, that we understand that it is as false time gets erased, the other aspects of the false matrix begin to dissolve as well, easily and effortlessly. And we're watching that in motion now.
Yeah.
Now, today I'm in Rio de Janeiro, where I've been for a few months, and I go to the gym and work out with a trainer. And I take a subway system that's here in Rio de Janeiro, and it's about 5 stops. So I go and I take the subway to the gym, and I take the subway back. And it's 5 stops in the middle, something like that. But the one thing that's different, the stop that's my home stop, it's the one of the only stops where the doors open on the left side instead of the right side. So I know when I'm back because the doors open on the left side. And the other day I felt a timeline shift. And then I came back from the gym. I got in the train, and the next stop, the door opened on the left side. And I was like, wait, what happened to the other ones? Because I looked outside and it was my stop. And we literally picked up in my stop and went in the other ones. And the angel said, well, right now, with the timeline shifts, you're going to start to witness a lack of continuity because we've been having the timeline shifts for a long time.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, they have a strict adherence of continuity. So everything that shifts happens subtly, or the miracle occurs, whatever that might be, that brings something in. But the angels were saying, now you're going to start to see timeline shifts that are going to look more like jump cuts than
Wow.
have continuity. And it's like, okay, because we're ready for them, because we understand timeline shifts, and because we're ready for that and we're not jolted. I was more like, yay,
Yeah,
that
I
was
know, right?
fun. Let's do another one. But maybe the me from 2013 might have been like, what the heck just happened, right?
Right. Yeah. I love that. I talked to someone recently who experienced a timeline shift or a reality shift, I guess, or timeline shift where he was sitting in his front room and he know that he had a blanket on his sofa. He was doing something, he turned to look, and the blanket was a totally different color than it was when he before he
Mm-hmm.
took his eyes off it. Totally different color.
Mm,
And I and he started worrying, okay, is the rest of my life still the same? Even though I still have my
mm-hmm.
kids, my wife, whatever, do I still have a job kind of thing?
Yeah.
And he said that it continued, yeah, that he had all that, but he actually witnessed like you did, witnessed in the middle of a time shift where
Mm,
that was a reality shift, which is kind of the same thing, I guess you would call it.
yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah,
this is how we create miracles, is
yeah,
because the is when we do these timeline shifts, that's where the more perfected form of something is waiting for us. And it reminds me of in the beginning when I started communicating with the angels and working with healing energy. Metatron and Raphael said the key to healing is remembering that you're not fixing something that's broken, but that you're remembering that it wasn't broken to begin with. And then they demonstrated something like, let's say someone had cancer cells on their body. And so what would happen is remembering that they don't have cancer to begin with, then it just vanishes because we're always existing in the perfect state or the perfected state at all times. But when we remember that, then whatever is the illusion has to disappear or dissolve. And they asked me to remember that we're not fixing anything that's broken as
hmm
much as we are remembering that it's not broken to begin with. And now that I understand variations of reality shift or timeline shifting, now that I understand that, I know that that's what they were talking about 20 years ago, is that by remembering that nothing is imperfect to begin with, that's when we start making the timeline shifts. That's also why it's so fun to be alive now instead of
yeah,
the last few years when it was torturous, is because we've made these timeline shifts, but we can only make them from frequency. And so we're in that frequency of perfection, or in the more perfected state. And that's why it feels so good and it feels so alive. And we're feeling a lot more fearless, and we're feeling a lot more in enjoyment of being in that creative juices.
right. Yeah. Yeah, for people that are and people that are watching here and aware of the shifting, that we are moving into higher uh, frequencies as we speak, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh, that it can be joyful and feeling good, and things start opening up, opportunities are opening up. But there's also people, if maybe you have some insights for people that are going through tough times right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and that it is difficult, difficult for them. Maybe things are happening where with health or financial things, finances, and things like that. Do you have any insights on how
Yes.
people can deal with that
Mm-hmm.
with ease and grace as much as possible?
Yes. First of all, to whomever that might be, you're absolutely not alone and you're not on the wrong path. And it's interesting to say that because very often we assume that because things are going well for someone, that they're aligned. And if things are challenging for us, that we must have lost the connectivity to that alignment. And nothing is further from the truth. It is love and our connection to heart space that determine our alignment. If we're here and we love others and we love ourselves and we love the divine realm, no matter where we are in that journey, we are still in alignment. And it's a different conversation for those who are service to self and are here to create something where only they get an upper hand and all that kind of stuff, manipulation, then that's the only thing that would be out of alignment. So you are in alignment. And there is a lot of power now in just slightly asking the question, in what way is this challenge here to expand me? And that's not meant to be a cop out, because I will tell you right now that the minute that we make a genuine inquiry into that, it will shift immediately in many cases. So that's one thing that you can, I don't want to say try because that's linear, but that's one of the things that you can employ as a way of moving through the difficulty. The other thing is that everything is a process of expansion. And at certain levels, expansion doesn't just happen through the joyful and what we would consider positive moments. Expansion happens through some experiences that aren't necessarily positive. And it's funny because I keep a miracle list. I have a notepad on my phone. It says miracles. And every time something miraculous happens, I add that to it because it keeps us in alignment with the quantum field. And recently, I decided that when something happens that isn't so joyful and expansive, that always brings a miracle anyway, even before I know what that miracle is, I've been adding it to the miracle list too, saying, okay, well, this is a miracle as well. And the best thing we can do is pivot our mindset into seeing that. And that's what we're all here holding the space of love for each other. And so even if I'm having a good time or feeling good or feeling expansive, when I encounter someone who is in that space of feeling stuck, I'm going to surround them with love in a way that creates awareness, or so that they can find the awareness and actually move through that into that more expansive space. And we have the power to do that with our hearts and our intention, and to create that intention around others, and to basically illuminate a spotlight so that we can see. And it is that shift. And the weird part is the minute we begin to look for how a challenging or stuck situation is part of the plan instead of something that came in to take us backward, the minute that we adopt that mindset, those backward momentum experiences show up a lot less frequently. It's like we pass through a gauntlet when we get through that. And if anyone is stuck in that process, you're surrounded by so many people who have passed through that gauntlet, who are happy to introduce you to, guidance through that. So we are here for each other in that way. I don't want to indicate for even a second that once you get to the other end of that, that you're not willing to be of service, for those who are still stuck in that, because that's the great thing about being expanded into that level of love. And so I want you to know that it's available to you from other people that have broken through that paradigm to help illuminate it.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Steph. Yeah, it seems, and I had this conversation not too long ago, with another gentleman I was speaking to on here on my show that seems like some people, I know I'm one of them, and it sounds like you've been through some dark times,
Mm-hmm.
have to hit have to really hit the lows, low lows in order to
Yeah.
expand, like you said, and to get into the what we would call high highs or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that's the human condition or the human choice or whatever we want to call it.
It is. I remember when the angels came to me, and after a while speaking to them, they said, "You're going to lose everything that you have in order to do the work that you came here to do." And they asked me if I was willing to do that. And I said yes, but then I asked, why is that possible? Because if I'm dealing with magic, why would I have to lose everything that I have in order to do what I would have to do? Well, as previously mentioned, I was in the real estate field in Orange County, California. So when the 2006, 7, 8 thing happened as part of the global uh, ascension
Hmm.
in the destruction of the old financial system
Hmm.
that imploded, that is imploding on itself, as part of that happening, I got to lose everything. The real estate market froze up. I couldn't sell houses. I lost my home. I lost everything. I lost my business. But I knew it was supposed to happen. But I will also tell you that even though the angels had made me aware that it was going to happen, that didn't mean that it was a cakewalk or a breeze at all.
No.
It was still very difficult. I understand now why I was meant to have that experience, and also, it's a wonderful way of being able to relate to those who are in that phase of the journey,
Yeah. Right.
because there is nothing better than being connected to someone who creates illumination in a way, who can also say, "Yeah, I've been there. Let me put my arms around you, give you a great big hug, and surround you with all of this love."
Yeah, well said for sure. I going back to Michael and Metatron, I just love Michael so much.
Mm-hmm.
He helped me. I mean, he and Yeshua, and there's same energy there for me
Mm-hmm.
with Archangel Michael and Yeshua Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Same type of energy, although I can
Yeah.
tell the difference, but there's that same beautiful Christed angelic energy that they
Mm-hmm.
hold with me. And uh, he, yeah, he's definitely been my sidekick for a long time, and
Yeah.
my has my back, that kind of thing. And I remember one experience with Metatron that was really funny. Very fun. They're very funny. They- With me, they like to handle things with humor. And
Oh, yeah.
it was on my birthday, and I was in meditation, and the room just opened up, and it was just this huge party, and all these not scary clowns, but kind of clown it, because
Mm-hmm.
clowns creep me out, scary clowns, but all this festivities and these beings that
Mm-hmm.
were partying coming up through the roof down into my room, and they were like, okay, get ready, and here comes Metatron, this this really
Mm-hmm.
big energy that the roof could not hold him
Mm-hmm.
in. So they were telling me that this expansion, we're going to help expand you in order to bring in Metatron's energy. And
Mm-hmm.
it was just this huge party that I had when he came
Yeah.
into my energetic field in order to work with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And when they show up, we can feel that energy. I know when
Yeah.
Yeshua shows up, it's this feeling of unconditional love that just goes right to the heart and expands. It's a very distinct energy signature, and it's
Hmm.
so beautiful to have that.
Right. Yeah. Since I've been watching, I mean, ever since my NDE, I've been very close to him, consciously on a conscious level. Since I've been
Mm-hmm.
watching that series, The Chosen. My future self hasn't got me away from the TV yet, but I don't watch that kind of stuff anymore that I was watching. But The Chosen has created so many synchronicities and miracles in my life just watching that
Mm-hmm.
series. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. If anyone wants to watch TV, I would recommend it if about this, it's about the story of Yeshua and his followers, it's created in a very modern way so that it's
Mm.
not so hard to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And the actor who plays Yeshua does an amazing job because I never really liked other series. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't watched that many, but I couldn't find any that really I thought portrayed him, or maybe it was the way it
Mm.
was made very well,
Mm.
um, that I could connect to, just me, that I could connect to. So, but I felt like this series does, and so many things have happened in my life since I've been paying attention to that series, and I don't know, yeah, it's just when we bring
Mm.
that energy in, our world expands for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the expansion is off the charts. So that's super cool. And that
Yeah,
also
totally.
goes to speak to those that are actually having those challenging moments, is that this is part of getting to the other side of
Right.
that. And there is another side to this. And
Yeah,
it's sooner than you realize.
totally. This too shall pass. I was just writing in
Mm-hmm.
my um, book this morning my experience from 20 years ago when I was going through my quickening, where I was in a really deep, dark place. Shadows were coming up, healing, lots and lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a space where it was so dark, and I felt terror that I was in this dark expanse for I don't know how long,
Mm-hmm.
eons, and I couldn't find my way out.
Mm-hmm.
And I get emotional talking about it, and I was calling to him to help me pull me out, and uh he was there with me. I mean, I ended up on the other side of it, obviously, but it was a memory, I believe, of maybe being in this matrix
Mm-hmm.
and not remembering how to get back home. That was my fear,
Yeah.
not remembering how to get back home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've had those moments where we get afraid that we're not going to make it back. And I
Yeah,
think that's built into that experience. And definitely the density is disorienting to a certain degree. And
good word.
that's
Yeah,
where, yep. Mhm.
yeah, totally. That's really good word. Your study of the law of one, I take it.
I have actually experienced it, and it makes sense because there's kernels of everything in so much of those works
Right.
that it makes complete sense and always what resonates. And I didn't dive deep into it, but I got the general gist of it.
Hmm.
And it makes perfect sense as another way of offering explanation to the unexplainable. And that's what everything is ultimately, right? Is
Yeah.
attempting to explain the unexplainable in a different way here and a different way there. And all realities exist simultaneously. And so you're like, wow, okay, let me take this in.
Yeah, that's I know, and that's a mind-blowing concept or mind-blowing reality.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I was able to understand it is my guides showed me is a circle, source could be like the sun, and we exist on the rays from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so as
Mm-hmm.
we move out from the sun on a circle of light, we're more dense. As we move closer to the source, going within, we become higher in frequency, but
Mm.
it's all existing at the same time, and we can put our focus anywhere on any of these rings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's mind blowing, isn't it?
it
What we
sure
can
is.
discover in this state of awareness, especially as we start comparing notes with each other and find out that somehow or another, through awareness, we're getting some of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And it is part of that awakening, and that we do have a library of knowledge that we have access to. And we start to access that library of knowledge, we're getting some of the same things, or things that actually validate what might sound mind blowing to begin with.
Right. Yeah. As we expand, it makes little more sense, a little more sense. And some days I
Mm-hmm.
understand it more than others. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thank you, Seph. Is there anything else you would like to share um, with my audience here? What you have coming up? Any other advice, maybe on how to connect with our own angels, if people are
Yes.
wondering about that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just being here with us is a wonderful way to calibrate that. Listening to this conversation does have the ability to begin to calibrate you with that. And there are two great people sitting right here that have the ability to, and I like to use the word empower over help, but who have the ability to empower you into greater awareness of this. I, for example, do teach classes in this, as do you, and it is always a different approach in that way. But being with others who are in great awareness will just allow you to calibrate it on your own. When I do individual sessions or when I teach courses, the first thing I tell to people, the first thing that I say to people is, the one thing that's really doing the work here is the calibration. And it's something that we bring in that's not me. And even just having the ability to listen to this show is a wonderful way of expanding your awareness. And it is all about expanding your awareness.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that word, calibration.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Um, do you have any, I'm going off on a different topic here, but do you have a couple minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any insights on fallen angels or any opinions, what you've learned?
So, right. It is interesting because having a conversation with a divine being at one point brought in a perspective that I hadn't expected. And I'm still in the process of letting that expand. I know my higher self knows what this means, but while I'm in the human experience, it's definitely expanding from something else. And what was said was that the Prince of Darkness, this is what the higher being said, the Prince of Darkness is our brother. And as such, was created by the divine
Hmm.
creator to create the illusion of darkness in what would otherwise be completely permeated by light.
Hmm.
And that contrast of the darkness is the way that the divine creator gets to know thyself. And what was said from there, and it has a lot different connotation than, well, considering that the Prince of Darkness is your brother, why not go play with him? It wasn't like that. Or play on his team. It wasn't like that. It's more like understanding that he's your brother and that loving him is the most fruitful approach to understanding duality. So, loving the darkness. And then this divine being added to that, that those who follow the darkness were referred to as the false army. And the
Hmm.
reason that this being referred to them as the false army, and that's those who follow the darkness, embrace the darkness, follow an agenda that is perpetrated by the darkness. They're the false army because they actually don't have power at all. And even though we may be at a point where the quote unquote power has reached an apex, the power to actually engulf this reality is not there, or to create anything isn't there. And that's why that power, quote unquote, is in dissolve. but higher beings refer to the dark agenda or those that follow the dark agenda as the false army because of the power that they can't possibly possess, being void of the light.
Yeah. It reminds me of the Lord of the Rings
Mm-hmm.
armies.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
everything is a step in new understanding. And that's what's been introduced to me so far that resonates. And yet
Hmm.
I only allow it to expand from there.
I like that. False army.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's all happening in the mind anyway, isn't it?
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Illusion. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I was in an out of body experience once and I was sitting there talking to my guidance and I asked, and we were in a bar restaurant kind of thing, and there was a band playing, and we're just sitting there at the bar talking. And asked him, I said, okay, because he was teaching me about illusion in the afterlife or on the other side. And I said, okay, out of all of these people here, because it was full, kind of there was people around,
Mm-hmm.
out of all of these people here, everyone around us, how many are real, aren't my projections? How many are not my projections? And he went like, he looked around
Yeah.
and he went like that.
Yeah. 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 That was
Yeah,
the other thing that was indicated as well as those that are part of the false army. That was the next level that was introduced at some point, was that they actually aren't even real to
yeah,
begin with.
yeah.
Good point. Good point.
I know it's crazy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was
Well,
nice
thank
to be
you.
here with you as well.
Yes, thank you. How do people get a hold of you? I will have your information down in the description, but if you could let people know how to get a hold of you.
My website is talktomyangels.com and my Instagram is talktomyangels. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me and to connect.
Okay. Thank you, Seph, and thank you
Thank
everyone
you.
for watching. Uh-huh.
Thank you. Yes.